PAL Lighting is a globally distributed line of wirelessly controlled underwater LED lighting and controls for pools, spas, landscapes, water features, and outdoor accent lighting. Our passion is to be able to light up any space, whether it's a pool or spa, an outdoor living area, or anything else in between. The result is the most powerful, reliable, and diverse line of wirelessly controlled lights in the aquatics industry that are fully compatible with today's major pool automation systems. Light up the night with PAL Lighting. Ready to learn more? Visit us on the web today at pallighting.com.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Pool Magazine Podcast.
Today I'm chatting with Bo Barnett from the award-winning design build firm GB4 Designs in Austin, Texas. Recently, we had the opportunity to see Bo speak at the Coverings trade show in Orlando, and we brought him on to pick his brain about a growing trend that's gaining more momentum, and that's the use of large format porcelain panels and modern contemporary pool designs. It's a pleasure to have you with us today on the show, Bo.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Man, I've been looking forward to doing the show with you. You got that rare combination of creative vision and technical know-how, and you're not afraid to learn by doing and are eager to share your knowledge with folks. And that's why people from all over come out to see you when you speak at these events. We're going to be discussing large porcelain panels, but before we dive into the deep end of the pool, so to speak, let's take a lap. I'd like it if you could give our listeners a little bit of background about your firm, what you guys specialize in, and what differentiates GB4 Designs from other competitors in your market.
Sure, I appreciate that. My journey started about 24 years ago, and I actually got a sales job with one of the national big box companies and just kind of went in because initially they said, look, we'll pay you to teach you how to sell swimming pools. And I didn't know much about swimming pools, but I had been in the design world for some time. I've always had a talent for drawing. I went to the Art Institute of Dallas for some time. And so after that, I kind of struggled to find a job and just found myself kind of wandering and saw this company that said, hey, we'll pay you a guaranteed salary just to learn. And I was very intrigued. And that ended up being my introduction to the swimming pool industry. I found a home there in North Dallas, sold pools. It went great. And then we actually moved to the Austin area. When I came to Austin, I really found a place that I knew was going to be home for a long time. And I thought I would actually be with the company that I was with at the time for my entire career. That was the plan. But at 26 years old, that company ended up closing their franchise without warning. And so I was left in a position at that time to not have a job and not know I wasn't going to have a job. We prayed about it, and the general manager and myself, we felt like we could do it, So we opened a pool company in 2007, and it was a very short time that within 10 years, we made top 50 builder in the nation, held that spot for 5 years straight. We won several awards. We really did a great job in the residential market, which is, where we found ourselves most competitive in the residential market. But I had more ambitious goals to really reach out and find a broader audience. And I found that a lot of times that the designs that we were producing and the builds that we were producing were getting a lot of attention. However, I wasn't really finding that niche to where I had architects and things like that necessarily wanted to work with me right off of the bat. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that the pool company, having custom pools in the name of the pool company leaves a little bit wanted by someone that's in an architectural firm, right? They want to work with another design firm, or they want to collaborate traditionally with someone that is an expert in that field, not just a pool builder. And I found a lot of times, even though my education, is extensive, I found that seeing that name and that branding really didn't work when trying to reach a more national market in the realm of design. And so for the last 5 years, that's really been more of a focus, is getting our design firm on a more national scale to where we can produce everything from structural engineering, hydraulic engineering, or just basic conceptual designs for pool builders, for architects, for home builders. And so now we're in a position to where we're able to provide those tools to people across the nation, as we also concentrate, exclusively on Central Texas with our builds. And that's where being able to promote large panel and some different things that are hopefully going to change, the design world in our industry, they really come in play for other entities, other demographics. There are great builders in California that are using porcelain. There are great builders in Houston and Arizona and Florida that are using porcelain. But I feel like we've just kind of tipped the edge of what's coming in the form of the application, what can be done with it, the performance and the exterior environment. Really feel like we've just touched on how much that can be introduced and actually perform better than what we have currently. So, I do feel like the large panel is something that can be used in the entry level all the way up to 7-figure swimming pools. And so that's why I think it's a much broader stroke as far as the industry and being able to be impactful. But as far as a larger outreach, if we can get folks to understand all the possibilities with porcelain, they can do it on an $80,000 pool, or they can do it on a $120,000 pool. It doesn't have to be, a $300,000, $500,000 pool that has this stuff on it. And so we've proven that with some of the work that we've done on smaller residential pools. That's really what I'm excited about. Again, I still build beautiful pools in Central Texas. I just can't build them all over the nation, but we can certainly design a swimming pool in a market like Florida or California or Tennessee. And then also we can help you find a competent builder in that area, because we are, connected throughout the industry.
Sure. I mean, your background isn't just design, but you're fluent in the structural, the electrical, plumbing details, the building of the pool. So I'm sure you have a lot of resources outside your local market to connect people with the right folks to help make their pool dream come true. But you've got over 20 years under your belt doing this. I mean, they say it's tough to teach an old dog new tricks, and a lot of builders with that kind of experience under their belt are reluctant to try new things. That's not you guys, though, is it?
No, we found at a very early stage in my career that education was going to have to be the foundation and the catalyst for doing what we wanted to do. I've always known I wanted to be in a luxury market. Some of the things that held me back with the big box store was not thinking out of the box and trying to just recreate the same thing 100 times a year. That's not what I really wanted to end up being a part of. So I found that had to have a foundation for education first. And the reason why you're going to make huge mistakes, and it's going to be very costly if you don't. So as I've gone through that process, that education process led me to also connections and collaborations. And, I was lucky enough to be a member of the Tributary Revelation, which you've had several members in your magazine. And these are some of the sharpest guys on the entire planet. And being able to have a resource like that to tap into and really share knowledge, share experience, understand the very best practices in our industry, it's been absolutely vital to be able to start to push the envelopes on different materials. Because if you don't know how materials are supposed to react in the normal environment, how are you going to be able to then understand how new materials may or may not perform in those environments? So the education is absolutely the foundation. But what I was saying is, as you go through that education process, I found it a little bit more difficult once you reach a certain threshold to really go further. And that's where now, with the Tributary Group, we're able to travel all over the globe and visit with vendors and see products in real time. And that's just, it's indescribable, the amount of knowledge that you can pick up being able to just walk a factory and understand every facet of what happens with that product. And so that's the stage that we're in now. Is, again, I love the reads. I love, all the technical details, but going to see these things, the application, that's where You say an old dog, new tricks. If I'm not continually learning and continually sharpening that sword, I don't feel like I'm doing justice to my industry, honestly.
100%. I mean, you're in a hyper competitive market, Austin, your hometown, where you guys are doing business. You are literally surrounded by pool builders in that town. You have a great reputation in your market, but you get a lot of respect from folks in the industry, not only because you're out there doing great work, but because of your willingness to share your knowledge with your peers. And I think that says a lot about the type of guy you are. But why do you do it when a lot of other folks out there are kind of gatekeeping that stuff in their heads?
If I hadn't had some amazing mentors early on in my career, I would have failed, period. And there's a lot of really well-intended good guys that are in this industry that just don't have a lot of leadership to understand some of the pitfalls. And that's a crucial part of raising an entire industry up. I don't care. I want to be the best builder in the entire world, but my goal is not to be on this big, platform above anyone. My goal is to share this to where we can all bring the entire industry up together to where there's more integrity, there's more freedom and expression, there's more accountability. All of those things are things that are very important. But if you don't have somebody that's trying to lead the way, if you don't have somebody that's trying to say, hey, come check this out because this is the right way to do this, and if there's a better way, let's learn together, then it's really hard, because there's enough business in my demographic, in the Austin area, in Texas, in the nation, to where you can really collaborate versus trying to compete. And, I found that's made a lot better resources too. I have pool builders all the time that reach out and ask me, hey, what do I do about this? And what do I do about that? And they're a mile away from me. And that's okay because I don't want them to get it wrong. All that's going to do is hurt their business, which in turn hurts our industry. And it's going to hurt their client. And now their client is going to, go around and talk about bad pool builders. Because everybody hears about what pool builders do wrong and not as much about all the things that they do right. So if I can help my entire community be better, that's what I'm going to try to do.
Awesome. I mean, I've seen you beating the drum about porcelain. I've heard you say that it's not just a trend, it's a movement. From the turnout at coverings, it's clear that there's a lot of people out there that are interested in learning how to do it the right way for their customers. So let me ask you, what first got you interested in incorporating large format porcelain tile panels in your pool projects?
It was the limitation of exterior veneer that were available. We've been doing this for about 12 years or so, something like that we've been using large panel. And at the time, the perimeter overflow spas had been a big deal for, well over a decade. It's been a big deal for 20 years almost. But, I just kind of got really bored with the, 1x1 or 1x2 tile or, I've seen stone, I've seen the calcium, I've seen all the stuff that they had, and it was just not as impressive. And I've been to some of the really, really nice homes, and I'm looking in these bathrooms, and I'm like, why can't I use this stuff outside? And the answer was, it's too soft. It's not going to last. What is available that is going to last? And I started talking to manufacturers, and it led me basically out to Italy, where we found our epoxy solution that we love. And they said, yeah, we have a thin veneer porcelain that's like, 3 to 5 millimeter that looks just like marble. And I said, what are the properties? What is it like with thermal expansion? What is it like with water absorption? What is it like with wear and tear? And they said, oh, it's almost impenetrable to water. It does not react to thermal, and it should last basically forever. And I said, why hasn't this been used outside? And the answer was, we don't really have an answer. Everybody, all the guys that I talked to said it's just not being done. So I tried it on 2 projects and learned an enormous amount on those 2 projects because we didn't have the right tools. and they were beautiful. They turned out glorious. They really looked beautiful. Now, we made some mistakes on cuts and some things that now you won't find those types of flaws in our current work, but the first time you ever do something is not normally the very best. And so we learned as we got better with this, but it was very impressive. It did win an award for at the Southwest Pool and Spa Show. And, I started looking into, the maintenance, the grout, the cost of glass tile versus thin veneer porcelain, and found I'm spending more on the better glass than I would be square footage wise on the porcelain. And you're not having the same maintenance. The grout lines are almost, completely gone because you got now 4 grout lines essentially on 4 corners. So it was just a really, really unique way that it also reacted to the water, very fluid, very smooth. And I just love that. That has gone from, hey, can we put something else on the outside of a spa or a pool, or to now, I mean, we can create furniture with it. We can do privacy walls. We can build your entire swimming pool with porcelain inside of it. So there's really no limits on what we can do. It just has to be engineered correctly and designed properly. And it's one of the very best exterior materials out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's very exciting, some of the designs that you're coming out with. But I think the one thing that's most exciting about it to me is the look of porcelain that you get in the pool area. I mean, steel, marble, even wood underwater. How does that kind of open up storytelling for you through design?
It absolutely does, because it almost baffles the mind as you walk outside and you see an all wooden wall that's coming out of water and that has water running down it. And you're going, why in the world would they be able to use wood? And that's been there for 10 years, by the way. It's almost like, there's some things that you can do with like floating transitional areas that look like wood that would traditionally be, for instance, look like a dock on a lake where it's a transitional path to another body of water, to another social area, for example. But you're using in porcelain, it looks just like wood. And now it's like, you just wouldn't think to be able to incorporate that material into that aquatic environment. And that's what's now, same thing with the steel. You get all these beautiful corded steel retaining wall and landscaping additions that you get to some of the more modern and kind of transitional rustic looks. And then all of a sudden you can put a water wall in the water that looks like the exact same material. It doesn't seem like it could be done, but again, it's very intriguing because it's perplexing to those that don't know how it's done, and it looks tremendous.
Yeah, I mean, you're using it in ways that we don't see quite often. You mentioned furniture, you're wrapping other areas, other features of the pool area as well. Do you think this material is going to become more mainstream in pool projects as we progress into the second half of this decade?
I do. I think, honestly, I think it's really going to be determined on if larger larger builders are going to invest in the education and the tools that it needs for their crews to be able to apply it efficiently. If you can't apply it efficiently, it's costly. If you can apply it efficiently, it's one of the most dynamic materials that's around. However, there's a learning curve to it. And, if you're building 200 or 300, 400 or 500 pools a year, you may not want to slow the machine down long enough to have a skilled trade that can take this on. I do believe that those that are in a position to teach their guys exactly what to do, or girls exactly what to do, what adhesion methods are important, what building practices are most important, climate, environment, things like that. Those are all extremely important. So if you can teach your guys how to do that, and then you can trust them to go out there and execute efficiently, then you're going to have a huge step up on in your market that just aren't prepared for this. I mean, it's going to take probably another decade for this to really catch up, for guys to be doing this a lot. Because I still think we're in the very early stages of what it's going to end up being.
Well, I know that large format porcelain's been somewhat of a game changer for you. It's got definitely everything that checks the boxes with consumers who are looking for that clean and modern aesthetic. Can you walk us through maybe one of your favorite projects where you feel like this material really delivered visually and functionally?
I do have one that's very special too. So we have a swimming pool that's actually a perimeter overflow swimming pool. And so this is where water flows on all sides of it. The pool's edges all taper and round to the inside to where there are no 90-degree angles anywhere on any of the perimeter of it. This pool's about 9 feet out of the ground, and full exterior, which is seen on 3 different sides because stairs that come down, are completely wrapped in a 3 millimeter Italian porcelain. And this is a textured, it doesn't look like marble. It almost looks like just like a slate, but it's very light in color. So it's reflective. And what meets with it is this gorgeous green glass with a green and gold epoxy grout. And it sounds a little bit off at first, but it's absolutely stunning. And what I love about the porcelain is that it only took us 2 slabs to be 8 feet off of the ground, and it actually wraps around a bow front of the pool itself. So the pool's not a square. The pool in the front has a large radius, and that is a flexible enough material to where it actually wraps around that front edge. And you can't really do that with any other material. Because again, there's only 4 grout lines, 5 grout lines on 40 feet of veneer. So it almost looks like one solid piece if you're 10 feet away from it.
I think I've seen that project on your social media pages. Yeah, definitely a great example there, Bo. Let's switch gears for a minute. At coverings, there were a lot of great questions that are being thrown around, and you were more than forthcoming about what you learned through your experiences. In fact, you discussed what happened behind the scenes, failures, experiments, tools that you had to purchase. You talked about the first large panel project being a financial disaster for you guys, but a
No
really
doubt.
big visual success for you. I was hoping that you can maybe elaborate on some of that for our listeners and your struggles with mastering this material.
Most certainly. So when we first spoke with the distributor of this product, we just ordered it. We didn't ask any questions. I just said, my guys are good. Let's go put it on, which was a mistake. So we ordered it. We got it on the A-frames. We got it to the job site. And almost immediately, we broke the first panel just trying to carry it to the backyard. 3 guys, 1 panel with hands and rags instead of suctions and racks. And so we broke the first panel. We got the rest of the material into the backyard, and we ended up using the wrong blades, which fractured the porcelain, which we didn't know what was going to happen. Again, when we applied the material, we first used a cementitious adhesion method, which was a mistake, and it shrunk very quickly and fractured the porcelain. We ended up with 7 broken panels, and it took a total of 11 to finish the project. You know, the first project financially was a disaster. It ended up being a beautiful project, but the biggest problem that we had was not understanding the tools necessary for that particular material. Logistically, adhesion wise, and also, you know, being able to cut it. The National Tile Council actually had a class where I sent all my guys to on cutting this thin veneer stuff. And so we ordered the tables, we ordered the racks. They have suction cups they're helpful for the large panel to move. We ordered the correct blades, the correct scoring. It was about maybe $6,000 worth of equipment we really needed to make it efficient. And again, that was 10 years ago. I think the only thing we've had to replace are the suction cups. Everything else has been great. It's lasted a long time. I mean, we've done probably 20 or 30 projects at least in porcelain. You know, that we went from 7 broken panels out of 11 on the first job. The next job required 8. We only broke 1. And now it's actually rare to have a broken panel. Now the guys know if you break a panel now, you did something wrong, you know.
Well, I think it's definitely the kind of material where the devil is in the details. You know, things
Yes.
like the more complex elements, like curves, are definitely a killer. I mean, but can you walk us through your current system and setup for doing projects of this nature? You mentioned that you switched from a cementitious to an epoxy system. Maybe can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Again, I'm not going to mention any product. I want everybody to do their own research, but I will say that we use the cementitious adhesion method from a popular mainstream company. And we followed every aspect of what we should have done on that project. We monitored the ambient temperature. We measured surface temperature. The area was tinted, so it was climate controlled. We mixed the material at the right RPM. Every aspect of it was documented and we did it right. Within 60 days of putting it on, it had shrunk, delaminated on several panels, and it broke several panels. And so when we contacted the manufacturer, they were not really interested in understanding what happened. They just wanted to kind of throw material at us, which I appreciate them trying to replace the material, but that's not really what we wanted. We wanted someone to help us understand why it was failing and what we could do to prevent that from the future. And we didn't get that support from that particular vendor. And so I actually contacted Kurt Rapp at the Tile Doctor, and he introduced us to a product, an epoxy product, which we use to this day, which is called Lido Elastic from Lidocol. And I've never, ever had a failure with that product. So we immediately switched to that as our standalone product for the porcelain installations. And it's just been wonderful. We've had no issues at all. And again, we've even adhered this material to a bow face radius, which we were told it probably won't work. And, that project is 4 years old, I believe, and it's perfect.
One of the recurring themes that kept coming up in your talk in Orlando was the importance of education. We talked about that a little bit earlier. You made it clear that this isn't plug and play stuff, this kind of material. What advice would you give to pool builders or designers who want to start incorporating porcelain, but don't even know where to start?
First and foremost, I would reach out to the NTCA, right? They have regional educational classes that they have for large panel porcelain. That would be the first resource that I would contact, because they're going to be in your US market. They're going to be giving classes probably this year somewhere close to where you're at. So that would be the first place that I start. The second would be contacting the vendors that produce this. M&M. Crossville Studios was integral in setting us up with the vendors and getting the education set up as well. That would be another resource that I would definitely reach out and ask them, what direction should I be going in? But I would contact the vendors themselves, contact the Tile Doctor, and talk to him about the adhesion methods that they would suggest for the large panel porcelain. Let them know what thickness you're using, what the weight looks like, and they'll be able to help you along the way as well. But the education, again, there's not a lot that Genesis and Water Shapes is doing right now in the form of specifically large panel, but that's where the NTCA does have that skilled trade and that specific class available. So that'd be the first place that I started. Anyone can always contact me at my office here in Austin anytime, and I am more than willing to help anyone that calls me. Anytime you guys, need any advice or need a resource, hey, how do I plug in? Where do I find this stuff? How can I find a distributor in my area? I'm more than happy to help.
That's awesome, Bo. I mean, you're pushing the envelope with large format porcelain. So what's next? Are there any materials or design approaches that you're kind of itching to experiment with?
I haven't taken on acrylic yet. I'm getting more and more clients that want to explore it. I've not been profoundly intrigued by it because I just feel like it can be a really pretty picture, but not necessarily an everyday great choice. If you have people that come and wash your windows every month, maybe, that type of deal. I think that there's some really amazing things that can be done with acrylic that people have not tied into yet, not on a larger scale. Some flooring, some double level things that I think could be really, really cool. I've seen some hotels do it, but not really on a residential scale. I like the I like the premise of optical illusions. So I have some ideas on some different things, on some different fountain ideas that kind of trick the mind, but I haven't really found a home for them yet. So sometimes an idea may take a year or two to get into, someone else's backyard.
Well, this has been a great conversation for me, Bo. I mean, you're not just designing pools out there. I think some of your work is really redefining what's possible in the backyard and beyond. I appreciate you pulling the curtain back a little bit on your process, your wins, your failures, and the way that you think about materials like porcelain in a totally new way. We're excited to highlight some of your projects in the upcoming feature in Pool Magazine, and I know our readers are going to walk away inspired to push the boundaries of what they thought could be done with their pool designs. So thanks again for joining us.
I really do appreciate your time, Joe. Anytime you guys need me, just give me a call. More than happy to help. I enjoy the magazine. I'm in it all the time. I'm usually in the digital copy, but I really do enjoy it, and I appreciate your time, sir.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Pool Magazine. Make sure to like, share, follow, and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on another episode of Pool Magazine Podcast.
PAL Lighting is a globally distributed line of wirelessly controlled underwater LED lighting and controls for pools, spas, landscapes, water features, and outdoor accent lighting. Our passion is to be able to light up any space, whether it's a pool or spa, an outdoor living area, or anything else in between. The result is the most powerful, reliable, and diverse line of wirelessly controlled lights in the aquatics industry that are fully compatible with today's major pool automation systems. Light up the night with PAL Lighting. Ready to learn more? Visit us on the web today at pallighting.com.